Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Black Ops Cold War in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the Type 63 tactical rifle. I think the Type 63 is a fun and satisfying weapon to use, but unfortunately it's outclassed by most other weapons. And I don't think that it's going to get much use in Warzone either, since the DMR-14 is better at range and, well, you don't really want to be using tactical rifles up close. Of note, the skill-based matchmaking testing results should be public this weekend. For the first time ever, we have found data that indicates skill-based matchmaking does indeed affect your connection quality, so that'll be a big component of the video. I may not post anything until then. I might be taking a day or two off to work on this one, but we will be having that discussion on In Depth very soon. Back to the Type 63 for today. The bullet velocity is 625 meters per second, which is overall fast in Black Ops Cold War. That's not slow. However, it is slow for a tac rifle. Most of the tactical rifles in the game have 700 to 775 meters per second of bullet velocity, so it'll be a smidge slower. You probably won't need to boost any bullet velocity to be competitive with other players, but you may feel it if you were to directly compare it to the DMR-14 or perhaps the AUG. The Type 63's damage profile is an interesting one, especially when you're comparing to the DMR-14. It'll kill in between 3 or 4 shots, kind of depending on how far away you are, with the up-close damage being surprisingly high at 68 per shot. However, it decreases down to only 49 at a distance. For reference, the DMR-14 was 58 up close and 50 at a distance, so very, very small change. This one has a pretty big swing, about 19 points of damage. Headshots will grant you one less shot to kill at all ranges, so it's always good to mix them in if you can get them. The maximum damage range, thankfully, on this weapon is 51 meters, which is extremely long range. This is the same range as the DMR-14, and pretty similar to most of the LMGs in this game. This is going to be much longer than your average engagement, so most of the time you're only going to need 3 shots to kill. However, you will need one more shot to kill at very long ranges. If you're playing combined arms, or you're trying to snipe all the way across the dunes in Satellite or something like that, you might need an extra shot if you're not getting headshots. Rate of fire on this weapon is 361 rounds per minute, and do keep in mind this is single fire instead of fully automatic, so you need to have a good trigger finger. Of note, that is a little bit slower than the DMR-14, so its theoretical time to kills are going to be a little bit slower, even though it deals more damage per shot. And I actually did enjoy the fire rate boosting barrels on this one. There's a couple of barrels that you can attach that will increase your rate of fire, and given how I decided to use this weapon for in-depth, I did enjoy those. Now, they do make your recoil slightly worse, but in the close quarters combat style gameplay, like you see me mostly doing here, it was very beneficial. At the end of all of this, the time to kill calculations are thus. Close quarters headshots will kill in 166 milliseconds, which is incredibly close. That's comparable to getting a just full body burst with an AUG or perhaps with the KSP. However, if you're not getting any headshots, that goes up to 332 milliseconds for most of your engagements as long as you're hitting them in the body. However, this is only in theory. This is your theoretical minimum time to kill. In practice, your time to kill is going to be a lot slower if you miss a single shot. Because it's a single fire weapon, it's got a low rate of fire. You miss one bullet and you're adding some pretty impressive delays on your time to kill, so that can be quite spooky. Type 63 handling stats are pretty similar to most of the other tac rifles, 350 milliseconds to aim down sights, and sprint out time is a little bit slower than a lot of weapons at 250 milliseconds. Overall, not a very fast handling weapon, and not even the fastest in the tactical rifle class. It does have a fairly normal reload time of 2.5 seconds, and the hip fire is again pretty standard for the tactical rifle class, it being a little bit more than that of assault rifles. ARs are 7.5 milliradians, and this one is 8.5. The recoil on this weapon is moderate with no attachments, yet even when you kit it for full recoil reduction, as you've seen that I have, it still has some side-to-side wobble, which I think is one of the big reasons it's somewhat frustrating to use. Whereas the DMR-14 will kick mostly vertically and predictably. Sometimes this one will bounce left, sometimes it'll bounce right. It seems to kind of like the right side a little bit more than others, but the side-to-side or horizontal recoil is brutal on a weapon that is so accuracy dependent. So when I build my class, as you'll see later, I went for maximum horizontal recoil reduction. This recoil is one of its major weaknesses because full auto assault rifles are far more accurate than this DMR, and that just I'm just crying in skill-based matchmaking over here. If you kit out the AK, the Zim4, the Krig, QBZ, pretty much any of them not the FAR, they're just going to be more accurate. It doesn't even take that many attachments to get your full auto assault rifle to have better accuracy than a fully kitted DMR. And because of that, it's just not good to use in a lot of lobbies. When you're playing in high skill lobbies, everybody's going to be running around with super low recoil laser krigs, and when your assault rifle that's dependent on single fire and not missing a single shot kicks more, that's not a good situation to be in. You really won't be able to use this weapon if you're playing in high skill lobbies. And I've played with it in both. In low skill lobbies, I'm able to run around and clown on people. Even in medium skill lobbies, it runs fine. But when the skill matching wants to make me play with the big boys, there's really no hope if you're using the Type 63. So if you're a super good player and you're going for diamond challenges or something, my condolences to you. Like the DMR-14, the Type 63 is probably easier to use on PC than it is on console. On console, the aim assist tends to fight you on this weapon and kind of push you off target, whereas on PC, when you don't have that, you can make the micro adjustments really easy and shoot people in the head easy, and you don't have that sort of resistance. So in my experience, all of the tactical rifles just work better on PC than they do on console, or the single fire ones. The burst is the other way around. The burst rifles work a little better on console, which is goofy, and that's leads me into another little cutaway here. There is something really just fundamentally bizarre about the hit registration on PC. I know it's far from perfect on console, but something is really fundamentally wrong with the way my bullets register on PC, and I think that's going to be getting an entire in-depth of its own sometime soon, because it drives me crazy some days. Anyway, let's get back on topic with the in-depth. I kind of like the iron sights on this one. This particular style of iron sight, with the gun being rather large and the sights being small, is usually everything that I hate, because I would say that it makes it difficult to track targets at long range. But for this particular weapon, it just kind of seems to work. I think it's because the vertical recoil is very low, so the gun almost never kicks up so that I kind of lose vision of my enemy, and because of that, the iron sights are clear enough for me to see and hit people up close and at range. At the end of the day, I think the Type 63 is just outclassed by almost everything, which is why this in-depth is so short today, and its most redeeming quality is that it's just very satisfying to use in low to medium skill lobbies. Like playing against regular people, it's a fun gun, you feel cool, you feel tactical, elite, and like big brain IQ when you beam people down with your DMR, and that's a really good feeling, and that'll be fun for most of you. But when you're kind of playing with the big boys, it's a miserable slog. I cannot recommend the Type 63 for multiplayer or for Warzone, because there are other weapons that do the same job better. So if you wanted a tactical rifle, all of the burst rifles are going to be better. If you wanted a single fire, ultra long range DMR counter sniper kind of weapon, I'd probably recommend a burst rifle, but even still, the DMR-14 is going to have better and more consistent damage at long ranges with a higher bullet velocity, less bullet drop, and it doesn't change its shots to kill, so that's going to be very important. If you wanted a sort of close quarters rushing stuffing class, the pistols and shotguns are probably going to be better. It can't compete with assault rifles because they're more accurate and oftentimes have a faster time to kill. There's just not really a niche for this weapon in the game right now. There's not really a reason to use it. Yeah, you can use it. You can definitely kill people. It'll definitely be some people's favorite weapon for whatever reason, but you just kind of have to accept that it's outclassed by everything. You will just be at a disadvantage when you're using the Type 63. My class recommendation for it today is very simple. I'm going with a 5 attachment and perk heavy class. The first attachment is the basic muzzle brake. It gives me 10% vertical recoil control. I can't use the KGB eliminator or Spetsnaz compensator or anything like that because they butcher my horizontal recoil control, which is bad enough already. I use the titanium barrel, which boosts the fire rate. That's quite nice in my opinion, because it helps me spam a little bit harder and a little bit faster in close quarters combat. Then, of course, we're going to be running the Spetsnaz grip, which has more vertical recoil control, but plus 40% horizontal recoil control, which is an actual godsend on this weapon. I almost can't use it without that attachment. Then we're going to be using the GRU elastic wrap, so I have snappier ADS, less flinch, and I can kind of change my stances. That does hurt my sprint out time, so I'm going to take an unusual attachment at the end and put on the KGB pad, which massively boosts my sprint to fire time and my aim walking speed, but makes my hip fire pretty rough. But this really isn't the kind of weapon that you're supposed to be hip firing with a whole lot. I mean, I guess you can do it up close, but you really should be ADS as much as possible, so I don't see that as the worst penalty. Guys, that's all for this shorter episode of In Depth. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you still learned something useful, even if I couldn't fully recommend the weapon, and I hope to see you all back in a couple of days when we're talking about skill-based matchmaking results. Drifter out. Uh-oh, looks like we're 15 seconds too short on this episode to hit the 10-minute mark, so I'm going to pad it out with some fun clips that I got this week that you may have already seen on Twitter, because I am a horrible, greedy, filthy snake of a YouTuber, and I want to hit that time limit and get a little bit of extra income off this video. In 3rd grade, I was asked to write a book about myself and predict my future. I wrote, "I'll be married and work as a computer whiz. Most kids will be gang members. It will be hard to breathe in the open soon. The government promises to stop air pollution, but it seems unlikely." And in 2020, that reality came true. I'm now married to a cyber wife. I work long nights editing videos and creating content as an online influencer, which I guess qualifies me as a computer whiz.